Welcome to the 2000 commonest words in Lindish. I've based this list on the 2000 commonest words in modern English, and I've simply translated them all into Lindish. You need to have subtitles turned on in order to see the Lindish words and how they are spelled. Try to learn 20 new words a day to increase your vocabulary. If you do this, you will have a vocabulary of 2000 words in just over 3 months, and you will be able to understand most words in everyday conversation. You can go through this in 3 ways. The first is to simply go through this list in the video and stop the video before I say the Lindish word. The second way is to write out the words on flashcards, with the Lindish word on one side and the English word on the other. You can test yourself both ways, first from Lindish to English and then from English to Lindish. Any words you don't get first time, put them to one side. In the next round, test yourself on the ones you didn't get first time, and so on until you can remember all the words first time. The third way is to write out the English words on a piece of paper, all 20 of them, vertically in a list. Then you can write next to the English words the equivalent Lindish word. Now, cover up the Lindish side and go through all the English words to see if you can remember the Lindish ones. If there are any you cannot remember, then write them on a separate piece of paper. Keep doing this until you have learnt all the words, and you don't have to write any words on a separate piece of paper to test yourself in a new round. One final, very useful way to remember words, especially nouns, is to write the Lindish word without the English word on a post-it and stick that to the object if you have it in your house. This way, you'll get used to seeing the object and automatically think of the Lindish word without having to think of the English word first. Now the list of 20 words. First I'll say each pair of words, and then I'll go into a bit more explanation afterwards. The, the, to be or to fare, wesān, and, ond, or a, ēn, to be, and it's to be permanently, sōn, in or inside, in, to, into, inter, he, hey, in, when it's not actually physically inside something, on, to have, habbān, to be, when it means to be something on a temporary basis. bēōn, bēōn. It, hit, hit. That, when it's used as an adjective, for example, that man, that book, that dog. That, that. For, for, for. They, here, here. I, itch, itch. His, hiss, hiss. That, when it's used as a demonstrative pronoun, for example, that is not the one I want, or that is over there. That, that. With, mid, mid. Now I'll go into a bit of explanation where it's needed over the list of 20 words. The. This is called the definite article if you've watched lesson 1. It has two pronunciations. You can either pronounce it all the time as the, or before a word which starts with a consonant you can pronounce it the, and when it is before a word that starts with a vowel, pronounce it the. Like I say, if that's a bit too confusing, just pronounce it the always. The next word is to be or to fare. Now, in Lindish, there are 3 words for to be. This is quite a bit different from Old English, because in Old English the verbs, their present tenses were a bit mixed up, and one verb for to be, for example, usually meant will be, which is unusual. In Lindish does have a separate way of forming the future tense. So the 3 verbs for to be have very distinctive uses. So the first one is wesān. Wesān. This verb is used when describing how you are, like I am well, I am feeling good, and so on. Also, when you are describing where you are, when it means that you're in a place for an extended period of time. For example, I am in London for 3 weeks. The present tense of wesān is ich wese, I am, du west, you are, he, heo or it, wes, he, she or it is, and the plural is we, ye, here, wesāth. we, you, or they are. So that's ich wese, du west, hey, or hit, wes, way, ye, here, wesāth. Next word, and. In Lindish, ond. Now note that the letter A, when it comes before an N or an M, is always pronounced O, and it's written as an A with a little circle above it. This is suggested in Old English by two spellings for most words with the AN or AM combination. They're also written as an ON or OM. Next word, a. That's the indefinite article. Now, again, if you've seen lesson 1, you will have heard me saying that normally the indefinite article is not used. So, for example, hus can mean house, and also a house. You only use the word en when either if the case of the noun is not clear and needs to be, or when whether it's singular or plural is not clear. Next word is to be, and that's to be on a permanent basis. Now, in Old English, this verb existed in the present tense. Ich du hey, hit is, way, ye, hier sind. But it didn't have a infinitive. The infinitive in Old English of this was wesān. So wesān had two forms in the present tense. In Lindish, this verb to be is a completely separate verb in its own right, and it has an infinitive, wesān. In German that would be sein. When you're describing what you are on a permanent basis, something that can't be changed, then you use the verb wesān. You use it when you describe what you are that cannot be changed, such as gender, ethnicity, height, etc. When you're describing your long-term appearance, and also when you're saying where something is permanently. So obviously that verb is quite different in usage to the way it's used in Old English. The next word, in or inside. The Lindish word is in. Now you have to be careful with this, because it literally means physically inside something. Like, for example, if you were to say in my hand, you can't use in. You would have to say on mínum hand, because if you were to say in mínum hand, that would imply that something is physically inside the flesh and bones of your hand. If you were to say in this paragraph, you would again have to say on, because you can't physically be in a paragraph, because you can't physically get into a paragraph. So again, you would have to use on. So you in when it means physically inside something. The next word is to, like the preposition to. To avoid confusion, you can always pronounce this as ta. Ta. But when you get used to speaking Lindish, in an unstressed position, it can also be pronounced t. As I say, until you get used to it, pronounce it always as ta. Next word, into. Lindish word is into. Into. Next word is he, and in Lindish that is hey. This is used for persons or animals with a male gender. If you are referring to a person without referring to their gender, when in modern English you would use they, there is a new pronoun in Lindish, and that is say. And say means he or she, so it's a gender neutral pronoun. So that's something brand new in Lindish, a gender neutral pronoun, say. Next word is in or on, and the Lindish word is on. And remember, that's when you use that when it's not actually physically inside something. Next word is to have, and in Lindish that's habbān. In the present tense, that's ich habe, du hast, he, heo, hit, hath, we, ye, hier, habbāv. Now that the present tense of habbān in Lindish is obviously slightly different from Old English. It's moving towards the forms of the verb as they were in Middle English and late Middle English. Now the third of our words for to be, and that's bēōn. Now, again, the way this verb is used in Lindish is different to the way it's used in Old English. Bēōn in Old English was quite often used to describe a future tense, so will be. But Lindish actually has a distinct way of expressing a future tense, so that's not needed. So in Lindish, the verb to be means to be something temporarily. You use it when you're speaking about what something is on a temporary basis. So, for example, ich golden verks, I am blonde, implying that is what you are permanently, a natural blonde. But if you say ich golden verks, it implies you weren't always blonde, or that you're blonde now but you're going to change it soon. So in the present tense, bēōn is ich bēōn, du bist, he, heo, hit, bith, we, ye, hier, bithun. The plural form of this verb was influenced by Old British, so that's why I chose it over the more usual Old English bēōth. Next word, it, and the Lindish word is hit. Next word is that. When it's used as a demonstrative adjective, for example, that book, that river, that song, then it's pronounced that. In Old English there wasn't a distinct word for that. The word for the and it was used to mean both the and that, but in Lindish, because there is only one word for the, it's kind of freed up that, and so now that is used to distinctively mean that. For. In Lindish it's for. Notice that's a short O, for. Next word, they. In Lindish, here. This word only refers to a plural number and it covers both genders. As I said earlier, because Lindish has a gender-neutral singular pronoun, say, you don't need to use they. So here only means they, referring to more than one person. Next word, I. And in Lindish that's itch. Itch. Next word, his. In Lindish, his. His. Next word, that. When it's used as a pronoun, a demonstrative pronoun. For example, that is not good, or that will be all. The word is in Lindish. The word is pronounced that. So the difference between the adjective and the pronoun is the first letter, that as the adjective and that as the pronoun. So it can mean that one or simply that. And the last word in our list is the preposition with, and in Lindish that is mid. Mid. Thank you for going through this list, and tomorrow there will be a new list of 20 words in Lindish.